And we do welcome back our dear friend and Coptic minister and an integral part of the Coptic Fellowship for decades now. We welcome Carl Franklin as he will present a very interesting topic that I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions at the conclusion of his presentation. He holds a master's degree in theology and psychology, and he has been a spiritual metaphysical researcher for over 50 years of his life here on Earth. During that time, he has gained insights of both the inner and outer worlds of self and the planet by utilizing meditation, channeling, along with the study of astrophysics, quantum physics, the Urantia book, and the Bible. He authored the book Earth's Ascension, Nibiru and the Spirit Realm, and is an international speaker and intuitive life script reader, which I encourage you to take a look more into that too, and talk to Carl if you'd be so interested in that. He does a nice website that you can check out for more details on all of his offerings. It's ourspiritualascension.com, and you can check out his offering for tapes, downloadable CDs, his books, and courses that are offered as well. Tonight's topic is the soul with Carl.
I spent 3 years going to a Lutheran seminary in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. My brother spent 3 years going to a Lutheran seminary in Philadelphia. My sister spent 3 years going to the seminary of the Unity movement. And would you believe that not one of us from the seminary heard anything about the soul? We were told that, yes, we have a soul, but none of them attempted to describe it. Why? They didn't know what it was, all right? And one of the things that I've learned through doing the life script readings, the first question that we ask in that reading is, what were you before you took on human form? And we have come from all over God's creation. And it even, I'm going to say, in some cases, extends beyond our universe. And that is us, is our soul. That is bedrock in terms of who and what we are. And our soul is, as Hamid said, it is God experiencing and expressing through us. And it is apparent from our experience here on the planet, and also from the story in the Genesis, the creation of man, where it says, and God created man, only I want to rephrase that, and God created humans in his own image and likeness. And this statement is so important, and so far as I know, it's the only part in the Bible where God creates him or repeats himself. And we are created in the image and likeness of God, because it's important for us to realize that. It's important for us to know that God can and does experience and express himself through you and through me. Now, I want to ask another question. Mike mentioned that the title was The Journey of the Soul. And hang in with me here. This is perhaps new information for many of you. Be discerning. It is not that our soul is ever new. Our soul emanated from the heart mind of the universal creator. And the universal creator instilled his wisdom, his knowledge, his essence, his all that he is, a microcosm of it in all that he created. Now, according to the Urantia book, the first thing that God created were 3 mighty, powerful archangels. And those archangels went on to then create their angelic families. And these were lesser archangels, but still archangels. They created their angelic family, and those created their angelic family, and so on. until we have, I don't know, hundreds or even thousands of archangels. Now, there are other aspects too. I believe that God created the Elohim. The Elohim are in the 10th dimension, and they are known as the shapers of physical matter. And the Elohim, well, I happen to have memory of having been an Elohim. And we were, the group that I was a part of, we were creating just life forms. And some other Elohim were creating planets and galaxies and suns and so on. And I remember that working on one life form that was so intriguing because the potential was so versatile. It could do so many things well. It had so much potential. And endowed in that life form was a huge amount of capacity for soul. And soul is the presence of the divine within us. And with that amount of divine knowledge, potential knowledge, potential energy and consciousness, this life form could do so many different things, could play so many different roles, could themselves be minor creators. And I remember as an Elohim, I made a commitment or a promise or expressed a desire. Sometime I'm in my journey, I want to become that. I want to experience living in that kind of a body. And at some point, as a 10th dimensional Elohim, I had a feeling. I shouldn't say that's not correct. But the Elohim that I was a part of said, I want to experience the lower dimensions. Now, from the higher dimensions, you can see the lower dimensions, but to experience that, you need to be there in embodiment in whatever kind of body or form those highest evolved beings in that level of consciousness have. So I remember the Elohim from which I came calling forth volunteers. And because of what I wanted to do, I volunteered. And I was one of thousands of volunteers. And I was fortunate, I was one of the 12 that were selected. And I left the soul of my Elohim and I dropped down into the 9th dimension. And in the 9th dimension, I was there until I experienced basically everything that could be learned in the 9th dimension. And my 9th dimensional soul said, well, let's continue this. Let's go down to the 8th dimension, which is a dimension of transition, like we're in right now in the 4th dimension. And wow, that was a bumpy ride in a bumpy life. And then I dropped down into the 7th dimension. And then went through the 6th dimension, which is a dimension of transition, down into the 5th dimension, which is the Christed dimension. And then went through the 4th dimension and went down into the 3rd dimension. My 3rd dimensional soul is a fragment of the 5th dimensional soul, which is a fragment of the 7th dimensional soul, which is a fragment of the 9th dimensional soul, which is a fragment of the 10th dimensional monad. All light workers, in my experience, and I've done life script readings now for 25 years for about 33,000 light workers, they all are descended souls. And that is the journey that our souls have taken. We have descended from higher levels of consciousness. And it's all been the divine consciousness. God has been able to experience through us at a variety of different levels and dimensions. That was our potential. Now you can see why I was so excited about being a part of or wanting to do that. So you have overlight in you what they call oversouls. Your oversouls are the higher level of souls from which you have descended. And in a life script reading, we connect in the last part, we do an initiation where you are connected with the original soul from which you have descended. And know that all of these higher dimensional souls, they're a part of your spirit family. They are overlighting you. You are their teacher. All right. They're learning from you what it's really like to be on these lower dimensions. So you're helping them gain knowledge and experience through what it is you are experiencing at the level that you're at right now. And they, as part of our spirit family, they're not only aware of us 24/7, but they're always waiting to see if we need help. Now, there's a law of non-interference. They can't just interject themselves. If you want help, you have to ask. But when you ask and when you pray, your prayers and your requests are heard by your spirit family, which includes your oversouls. It includes most light workers of 21 or 22 angels. We have a couple of guides from the heavenly realm. And we have master teachers, and Hamid Bey was and is still a master teacher. And we may, if we qualify, we may have an ascended master teacher. We have 25 to 30 beings in our spirit family, and that includes our oversouls. Now, can you imagine with that kind of help from the spirit realm, what you're capable of? If you have the desire, and you're willing to ask and accept the help that is offered. And we communicate with our spirit family most fully and completely, both communicating to them and receiving from them in the meditative state. Our logical conscious mind, it gets its information from the five senses. Well, these are spirit families not in the physical realm, so not a part of the five senses. So the logical mind, the conscious mind, is very limited. And that's the reason our subconscious constitutes 85 to 88% of our mind, so that we can be open and receive and go beyond the five senses and the physical world. There's one other thing I would like to say about not only our soul, but about the soul that exists within everything. Everything in all of creation is a descended aspect of the creator of our universe. Ortran read in here that even from Hamid Bey, that even rocks and literally molecules of air, there's a spiritual basis behind all of creation. And that is, for me, the definition of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is the omnipresence or the everywhere presence of the Creator. And there is nothing in all of our universe that has not emanated from the Creator. Now, the science tells us, the physicists tell us, that everything in the universe is made out of energy, and that's been accepted by science for over 50 years. And that's true from my perspective, but it's not a complete explanation. It is not only energy, but all energy has consciousness. And everything is made out of conscious energy. So there is a divine consciousness in the air we breathe, the water we drink, the clothes we wear, the house we live in, the car we drive. You can never be separated from divine consciousness. We are made of it. We are filled with it. We are surrounded by it. It's all there, not only for us, but for everything that exists to enjoy, to draw from, and it's all there to support everyone and everything else. And that is the oneness that exists in this beautiful universe created by our infinite, wise, and I want to say playful creator. All right, let me pause here and open it up for comments and for questions. Anything, if anybody have anything that they would like to add or subtract or question, the floor is yours.
Hi. I wanted to ask, what is the difference between the soul and the Christ that's within us?
Okay, when Jesus walked the earth, he was functioning at the high end of the fifth dimension. And in fact, our fifth dimensional soul is referred to as the Christed soul. And Jesus had become one with that, as Hamid Bey indicated in what Ortran had read. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
I think it does. The other question I had was, I know you've studied the Urantia book, and I came across the Urantia book many years ago and read parts of it, but at that point I was new into New Thought, and I found it very hard to understand. But the one thing I was always curious about, who wrote the Urantia book? I mean, how did that come into being?
Okay. The Urantia book makes the Bible, from my perspective, look like a primer. It goes so far beyond. The Urantia book was channeled in the mid-1930s in the city of Chicago by I shouldn't say channeled, but from a dentist. And this dentist would go into a trance state. All right. And if you look at the index of the Urantia book, there are a couple of pages that list the ones that are doing, giving the messages. And each one is well, the names are mind-boggling to begin with. So anyway, when these channelings, or when this was happening, the wife was so concerned because he would go into really a deep trance. He had no consciousness or memory of what he was doing in this. She went and called their family doctor. Also lived. This was a high-rise complex in Chicago. She went and got the doctor and says, "Will you come?" And he was so intrigued by what was being said. He went and got a psychiatrist who also lived in the same building, and they were so intrigued by it that they scheduled every Wednesday evening. They would all meet, and he would go into this state and bring forth this information. So, being in the mid-1930s, it was done as scientifically as was possible at that time. And the doctor hired a stenographer to be there and record it. All right. And then she would type it up. And that's how the book came into being. And if anyone is interested in reading the book, please do not read it like a regular book. There are 4 parts to the book. Read part 4 first. That is 900 pages, and it is the story of Jesus as told by the angels that overlighted Jesus. So it's about Jesus without the influence of the Jewish culture, the level of consciousness of the disciples, okay? And those two things really distort what is in the Bible. And in fact, the Urantia book says dozens of times in that 900 pages, when Jesus gave a talk, and he said, and the disciples did not understand. Or it may say, well, none of the disciples understood except Andrew. And Andrew was the head disciple. He was by far the most spiritually evolved and probably the most intelligent of the disciples. And after the Pentecost, when the apostles then began their ministry work, Andrew said he had a completely different understanding of what Jesus meant and who he was and why he was there than the disciples. But hey, it was 10-1, and he says, "Hey, I'm out of here," and he dropped out, and Peter was made the head apostle, but then they kind of booted Andrew out too, and so they put Peter in his place as head disciple. Okay. So anyway, does that answer your question?
Thank you. That was good information. I've tried in the past trying to figure out the story, but you really can't find that story anywhere.
Well, it's now on the internet, or you can
No.
on the computer. But please understand, part 4 took place on the earth. Part 3 was the creation of the earth, the seeding of life and evolution of life on the earth. And then the parts 1 and 2 did not take place on the earth. We do not have many words in our vocabulary to describe what they needed to describe, so they inserted their words. And that's what makes it so difficult to read. You have to try to figure out what their words mean. All right. And because they're dealing with stuff that is just, it's mind-boggling information, literally. So read part 4 first, then part 3. And if you want to get into part 2, fine, do that. But expect that you're going to really have to work there. And you may want to do a lot of meditating as to what you're reading. Okay. Anything else here?
I just wanted to go back, Paula, to your original question. It was something about the Christ consciousness, right? And how does that relate to the soul consciousness? Is that okay? Okay. Okay, here we are in this third dimensional earth plane, and our intention here is to become Christ conscious, because that's where Christ was actually at here as he walked earth plane. So that's what we're doing is, you know, we're achieving, moving to that essence where we are achieving a fifth dimensional consciousness, which is the Christ consciousness. But then I think this makes sense, and hopefully it does to you also. But where it says here, in Hamid's writings, it says soul experiences. It says the compilation of the soul's experiences, which of course part of that Christ consciousness, well, what you're doing now, but even the Christ consciousness, of its many levels of expressed consciousness are recorded in the abstract archives of astral consciousness and released into soul consciousness, which becomes part of universal consciousness. So it's all one. It's all one, but there is a little bit of a process, you know, so whatever we are attaining in our awareness and consciousness moves then and is put into universal conscious or God creation. So because we left the heart mind of creator to experience, to express, and so we're in essence doing that by ourselves, but we're not, because we're still part of the whole, and it all gets gathered together. Everything that we do, every experience we have, every breath we take, it's still part of universal consciousness, but we are expressing it in different forms.
Okay.
Thank you.
When Jesus walked the earth, he would say, well, he did say, my Father and I are one. Now, by that, he was saying that he had connected his consciousness with his soul's consciousness. That's what Father means here. And he also said, the works that you see me do are done by the Father within me. They're done by his soul. All right. And we have, our soul is functioning as we merge with it. Our soul is now functioning in the fifth dimension. And as we continue to raise in consciousness, when our soul reaches the Christed level of consciousness, which is the highest level of the fifth dimension, then what Jesus said will become our reality. He said, everything I can do, you can do, and even greater. And he said also, do you not know that you are God? Quoted in the Gospel of John, and almost completely ignored by the third dimensional Christianity. And much of what's in the Bible is third dimensional consciousness of the disciples. And I'm talking about in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because they could only accept what was at their level of understanding. And so much of what Jesus said was above their level of understanding. So Christ consciousness is attaining the level of consciousness that Jesus exhibited. And his reason for coming here wasn't to save us from sin, because sin separates us from God. And how in the world can we be separated from God if our soul is a microcosm of God and it's within us? All right. So Jesus came to show us, to demonstrate who it is we are and what our potential is and what we're capable of. All right. He didn't come to die for our sins, because that was based on a misinterpretation of the story of Adam and Eve. And the church has only promoted one explanation for Adam and Eve, and that was the one they inherited from the Jewish religion of Jesus's day. And that was original sin. But we've all been in the Garden of Eden. That's where you spent the first 15, 16 years of your life. You were provided for, just as Adam and Eve were. And so that's one explanation for Adam and Eve. Another explanation is Adam and Eve did what they knew they shouldn't do, and they had to pay the consequences. And the lesson is we live in a world of cause and effect. And that's a another interpretation of the story of Adam and Eve. And I like these two interpretations much better than the interpretation that the church has perpetrated throughout our life.
I have a question.
Yes.
I love what you're laying down here. It's just so clear and so definitive and so much needed. And there's work we're doing, so dang. But what do you think is a good visual metaphor representation of the soul? It's a picture of it. Is it a heart with wings? Is it a is it an angel? I don't want that. Sorry.
I do not have a visualization for it, because
you don't have one?
No, it's not physical.
I know, but as a symbolic visual, is there anything to symbolize the soul?
I think each person would have to come up with their own symbol for it to be meaningful to them. You can visualize it any way you choose, all right?
So go into meditation.
And ask.
Yeah, and ask.
I
Okay.
mean, I'm thinking of stained glass windows and spiritual art and iconic creations that are in sacred places to hold remembrance for this reality.
I want to ask you, how do you visualize it?
What she just said.
I visualize it as a pink cloud.
Okay.
That's fine. And see the cloud in you and around you then.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Mhm.
And also, I forgot what I was going to say. Wait a minute. You're saying that all energy has consciousness.
Yes.
That is a groundbreaking, definitive, bottom line idea that it mandates our understanding that God is everywhere. It just, it unifies physics with spirituality. I just think that's extraordinary.
Okay, would you believe that science is on the path to discovering that?
Yeah, I know. Yes.
The quantum
But
physics.
to actually say it so simply just makes it so clear.
Good.
I have
I'm
a couple questions.
Yes.
A while back, I talked at the Spiritualist Church about the Moses Code and the I am that I am. And even before I got to the place in the book, I went, oh my God, Jesus was using the Moses Code. And I looked up all the I am statements that Jesus made, and he sure was. So what do you think about that?
Okay, I'm not that familiar with the Moses Code.
Well, it's basically using the name of God. Look what Moses did in using the name of God, and look what Jesus did using the name of God. I am that. I am.
I thought I heard somewhere that Jesus was the reincarnation of Moses.
Well, that's a possibility, but for me, my I am is my seventh dimensional soul. That's the level of consciousness it's functioning at, is the level of the I am.
Okay. Well, in the Moses Code by James Twyman, he's talking about all the miracles and the manifestations that you can create using the name of God, and that it was made illegal by the powers that be at the time because they didn't think that just any random person at whatever level they were operating at should wield that kind of power. And so when Jesus came around and was using it, it was like, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that there suggests that that was probably the reason he was killed.
One of the things though about the I am, every time you say that, I am that I am, or I am light, I am love, you know, you're creating that within yourself. Yeah. And so that's really, I think what, for me, that's what Jesus was doing. He was telling us anything you say, that's what you are. So what is it you want to be? Do you want to be light, love, peace, and joy? Or do you want to be angry, anger, or whatever? But yes, that tool could be used very much for the positive and the negative.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that I have heard, and I kind of ascribe to this, the Adam and Eve story and being expelled from the garden. It's the one thing that they couldn't eat from or entertain or digest, have knowledge of, was the tree of the knowledge of, or the tree of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. So in the creation stories, it's like, as everything was created, they sat back and said, oh, this is good. This is really good. And nothing was created that wasn't called good until Adam and Eve started thinking, seeing things that were not good and started calling it such.
Isn't that the phase we went through as a teenager with our parents?
But I think that humanity is going through it in the Aramaic term for sin. It's an archery term. It just means you missed the mark. So you made a mistake.
Yeah. See, sin is not a part of my vocabulary.
Right.
In that it's, yes, we learn from successes and we learn from failures. They're both good. Okay. Anything else here?
Carl,
Yeah.
as a soul, aspects of the soul in the third dimension, there's a phrase I came up with several years ago called spiritual amnesia, that in order for the soul to take on the soul contract or the soul agreement in this particular lifetime, parts of the soul have to kind of forget itself, that it's love, innocence, goodness, and such. So my question is, what would you say about that the soul has to purposely forget itself in order to take on the soul contract issues, with the intent of ultimately remembering again before we depart this in this particular lifetime?
I think part of the dissension process of our soul, the deeper we go, the more prone we are to get to block out our soul. Our conscious mind is so busy with coming in. The information for the conscious mind comes from the five senses, and we get so focused on what's out there that we ignore what's in here. And the only way we can get in touch with the soul is to slow our conscious mind down. And from a psychological perspective, when we hit 13 brainwaves per second, right now we're at about 22. When we hit 13 brainwaves per second, that's the brainwave of the conscious mind. Then from 13 to 8, the conscious mind is relaxed enough that it can become aware of the subconscious. And the soul, our contact with the soul happens in that alpha state, the 8 to 13 brainwaves per second, which we call meditation. We also call it falling asleep and waking up. So yes, if we get so busy with the outside world, we're oblivious to having a soul. So we need to quiet our mind to get in touch with it. That's a good point. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Anything else? Are we ready to go to bed?
I think you changed the service around a little bit. Usually questions are at the end, so I don't know what's next. What are we
I have a
doing
question,
next?
Carl. Carl, with soul transitions and family leaving, in my case, in recent months, and it's been asked to me recently, you're so used to having the physical person in your life, like I see you now, you're with us, but where are they? I had that question posed to me recently over this week. Where are they now? I mean, you're so used to Dad being, at the condo or at home. When they go to their transitional place of the astral plane that you've talked about before, I wasn't trying to answer that question. So if you could share some insight on, in maybe a layman's term way of where is the soul and what does the soul look like that Diane brought up, is kind of an interesting question as well. It's probably what you see within your own inner divine eye, is like you mentioned. So I'm kind of saying a statement and a question. What is your perspective of when you have a loved one cross over, they go to the astral plane? How do you say that to someone that isn't really familiar with that life review that you've talked about before, and
Taking back to God, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask one thing. I asked them a question. Have you ever seen a thought? Have you ever seen an emotion? Are they real? No, you can't see them. You can't with any of your five senses, but they're the most real thing in your life. They are a large part of what makes you you. And your soul is the same way. It's not physical, but it is your life force energy comes through your soul. It emanates from the creator, him herself. And your soul has been always connected with the creator because it's an aspect of the creator. All right. Now, according to research on death and dying, when a person dies, they do not lose any consciousness. They do not lose the ability to feel. They do not lose the ability to think, to make decisions, etc. They make choices. And so our soul, or our death process, the only thing that has changed is our mental, emotional, and soul bodies have left the physical body. You're exactly the same person, but it's a massive weight reduction program. You weigh 5/8 of an ounce, all right? But it's still you. All right, it's everything that you have created yourself to be is in that mental, emotional, and soul body. And it's those three together are called your astral body. And they descend. And we know this because of thousands of experiences of people who have died and come back. That astral body leaves the physical body. That is the root cause of death. That's why the brain stops functioning, why the heart stops functioning. There's no medical reason that they should stop at the same time. But if the life force is pulled from the physical body, that's death. All right. And the life force is in the soul. And the soul goes up, and it, according to the common reports, they go to the light, and they have a choice of going into the light or not. If they choose not to, then they stay in the astral plane that they're in, and the light disappears. And if they choose to go into the light, what I see is the tunnel of light is, the further you go in, the higher the frequency. And when you hit the frequency of your consciousness, you are reconnected with that part of your soul that does not come into physical embodiment. And there's a flash of light when you merge with that part of your soul, and now you are completely the person you are. All right. And that part of the soul is the memory part of your soul. And can you imagine, if you've descended from all of these levels, how much memory there is there? When you connect with your soul, then you shoot up into heaven. The tunnel of light is the vestibule to heaven. All right. And when you shoot up into heaven, what I see happening, you go to the welcome center, and all of the people that you have loved and been close to for the past 7 lifetimes are there to welcome you. And their greeting is, welcome home. And heaven to them is home, because you spend roughly twice as much time in heaven as you do here on the physical earth. And when you're ready for another step in growth, then you go to school, which is here on the earth. Okay. Does that answer it?
It does. Thank you, Carl.
Yes.
I'd like to suggest too, I watched a video on YouTube today about a near-death experience.
Yes.
And there's a whole lot of those on YouTube, and they are so interesting about what happens to people. And Anita Murjani, of course, is also an excellent example of that. She's got a good video out there as well, explaining what happened to her. And then she did come back. But I think if you haven't watched any of those or listened to any of those stories, if you do, you'll get a better feeling for what that's like when you pass over.
Personally, I'm kind of anxious to go back. Okay. But I'm also, I don't want to miss the show here. I mean, this is a exciting place to be right now.
The most recent near-death experience I received a link to was Natalie Sudman, S-U-D-M-A-N, and she was killed in Iraq. Her Humvee ran over a landmine. And what I got out of that was that there's no punishment. There's no, if you were mean or compassionate and kind, it doesn't matter. And you just came to experience what you experienced. And yes, there are consequences for behavior, but I'm starting to not really believe in karma, not the way I have normally understood karma. It's like you did something good, bad, or whatever, and you're coming back to balance it. That's like a form of punishment.
Anything else here?
Most recently, I watched a video that Wayne Dyer's daughters have done, and Wayne Dyer has been in contact with them. He told the daughter, one of the daughters, that she was going to have a baby on the 4th of July. And she didn't think she could have a baby because she had just had a baby and she was nursing, and she didn't think it was possible for her to be pregnant. And so after getting this message, she took a test and found out she was pregnant. She went to her doctor, who confirmed it, and the baby was born on the 3rd of July. Oh. And there are a number of other communications that he made with is making with his family from the other side. He's continuing to teach, and they're now doing classes with him from the other side. He's on the other side, and they can't always hear him. There is a medium who is translating between them this information, and she had no knowledge of the family before. She had not ever been in contact with any of the daughters.
Yeah.
And so it was very interesting to hear this videotape that the daughters and the mother had presented. They're doing a course right now. I'm not taking the course, but I think it was interesting, because usually what you hear from is the person who died and came back. This is you're hearing from a person who died and is still dead, or not dead, but living on the other side. So,
Yeah.
and from the messages that are coming through, they're not things that somebody could just pull out of the air and guess at. And I know I myself had a medium tell me years ago, when my father died, that he would appear to me at different times. He would be in my home with me, and I would know by a door that would open at knee height. And at the time, she told me that, and that he would come and sit on a piece of furniture in my house that was something blue that he would sit on, and my sofa was blue. And I got an antique desk from my great aunt's house that had a door that opened at knee height, and every so often it opened up. And it's like, I didn't have this at the moment this lady was telling me this, and I didn't know I was getting it. But a number of the other things that she said, somehow a medium can see these things and tell you things that are, who would know? Does everybody have a piece of blue furniture in their house? I don't think so. But so people from the other side are trying to communicate with us. And what Wayne said to his daughters is, you can't hear me. I am speaking to you. I am trying to reach you. I am trying to contact you. That's why he's using this medium. And the medium, when this one daughter was getting really upset, saying, Dad, why aren't you talking to me? That morning, the medium said that she woke up and she had this message from Wayne to call the daughter right now. It was 6 a.m. She said, are you sure at 6 a.m. I should call your daughter? And he said, call now. And she did. And the daughter said, I was just dreaming and saying, why aren't you talking to me, Dad? And the message was, I am talking to you.
Yes.
So there is a communication even after death. It's learning how to read it and hear it and see it. And so in that meditation, I think that's what the course is that they're offering now, is to learn how to connect with your loved ones on the other side.
Yes. Well, we're running out of time here, and I want to thank everyone for being here and sharing your thoughts and letting us into your life. And so thank you. My
Thank you,
blessings to
Carol.
you.
Great job, Carol.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Hey.
Yeah.